Okay, so now let's briefly look at the subject of pornography and its relationship to the end times. Now, the one with religion in the Bible is accorded the title of Mystery Babylon, the mother of harlots or the great harlot, and in other translations, the great whore or the great prostitute. And we can read about that in Revelation 17. Now, while that's a symbolic description, we can also see a literal application of that term. Now, there was a partial fulfillment of the great harlot prophecy in the 10th century when the Roman Catholic Church became literally entrapped by harlotry. That rule during this time has been described by historians as pornocratic government, or the rule of the harlots, and that was between 904 and 964. And one pope became completely under the spell of one female member of this family who used sex to exert her power over the religious affairs of Rome. Now, it was this pornocratic rule that tellingly brought about the Dark Ages, friends. As the ruling power engaged in harlotry, a time of great darkness descended upon the land. A terrible tribulation ensued for the Christians of the day who were martyred. Many were beheaded for their unyielding faith in Jesus Christ. And of course, both tribulation and beheadings of the saints follow the prophesied great harlot end time system. Now, from this event, we can understand the reality, power and workings of the great harlot religious system of which the Apostle John prophesied would rise from Rome and dominate the globe in the end times. Now, we can get other prophetic insights by looking at the etymology of the word pornocracy. Now, pornocracy comes from Greek pornokratia, meaning prostitute rule. Now, it's derived from the Greek word pornei, which means to sell, and the word porni, meaning prostitute, is the word from which the English word porn is derived. Now, in these end times, we're living in an age that is literally awash with pornography, aren't we? The viewing of prostitutes, basically, performing sexual acts, where people bow down and worship the graven images of other people. Now, porn has become literally embedded into our culture. Accelerated by the information age, porn has found its way into all streams of media. What was once obtainable in secret from under the counter is now readily available at the click of the mouse in every internet-enabled home across the globe, and of course on smartphones too. Now, significantly today, a bronze idol called Belle, which of course means beautiful, stands in full public view in Europe's Sodom, Amsterdam. Installed in March of 2007, the statue honours the prostitutes of the world. That international symbol of the harlot system reveals just how acceptable the destructive sex trade has become and will continue to be in the new world order of the Antichrist. Now, conversely, the Bible says, for a harlot is a deep pit and a seductress is a narrow well. She also lies in wait as for a victim and increases the unfaithful among men. We can read that in Proverbs 23 and 27. For the lips of an immoral woman drip honey, and her mouth is smoother than oil. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lay hold of hell. For why should you, my son, be enraptured by an immoral woman? His own iniquities entrap the wicked man, and he is caught in the cords of his sin. He shall die for lack of instruction, and in the greatness of his folly he shall go astray. We can read that in the book of Proverbs. Now, this harlotry through the medium of pornography is not a random perversion within our culture today. No, it's intrinsically linked to the prophesied great harlot religious system. Now, this form of idol worship is not only one of the vices that will aid in the religious system's rise to power, but it's also one that will ultimately result in the worship of a man, the Antichrist. And he, the false prophet, exercises all the authority of the first beast, Antichrist, in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast. Revelation 13:12. Now, the Bible exhorts humanity to flee from all sexual immorality. 1 Corinthians 6:18. Now, if those who engage in these practices do not heed the warning, it will be impossible for them to withstand the wiles of the devil in this late hour. They will, without resistance, succumb to the deception of the Antichrist and give themselves over completely to his system. And he, the false prophet and the head of the great harlot world religion, deceives those who dwell on the earth. Revelation 13. Now, the Apostle Paul confirms that fornication, which is adultery, is synonymous with the religious act of idolatry. Therefore, put to death fornication, which is idolatry. Colossians 3:5. And again in Ephesians 5:5 he writes, for this you know, that no fornicator who is an idolater has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. Now, this is why Jesus charged that looking upon the female form or the male form lustfully was akin to the act of adultery, Matthew 5:28, because it is idolatry. worship of the human form. In Romans 1:25 we read they exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshipped and served the creature rather than the creator. And Romans 1:26 goes on to describe the fruit this kind of worship brings. For this reason God gave them up to vile passions, for even though women exchanged the natural use for what is against nature, likewise also men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust for one another, men with men, committing what is shameful, and receiving in themselves the penalty of that error which was due. Romans 1:26-27. Now, as men and women exchange what is natural for unnatural, we see yet another fulfillment of end-time Bible prophecy. Today, the sanctity of traditional marriage between a man and a woman hangs in the balance. It is under vehement attack by amoral groups and Western governments. The Bible declares the silencing of marriage in its description of the end-time doom of the religious world system. Revelation 18:23 reads, "The voice of bridegroom and bride shall not be heard in you anymore." And of course in 1 Timothy 4 we also read during the great apostasy, "Now the Spirit expressly says that in the latter times some will depart from the faith, giving heed to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons, speaking lies in hypocrisy, having their own consciences seared with a hot iron, forbidding to marry, and commanding to abstain from foods which God created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and know the truth." Now we can see a fulfillment of that beginning now as lawmakers are actually looking to end marriage licenses. Now the false worship of people is also evidenced in the music industry, and today many recording artists dress and perform in a blatantly sexual and pornographic manner in ways that in former years were reserved only for the strip clubs. Miley Cyrus' sexually debauched performances, and Madonna's too. Remember the old sacrilegious music video Like a Prayer? Well, that prophetically portrayed the end-time fusion between sexual and religious idolatry, friends. Now, more and more singers' performances are blatantly sexual in nature, and this is nothing less than prostitution for the masses, and as Christians we should not watch or take any part in this destructive and Antichrist style of music. Now, it's this kind of conduct which has caused fans to literally idolise these aptly named divas. This adulation is a form of religious style worship, and Pastor Keith Hudson, who's actually the father of Katy Perry, the pop music star, he said, "I was at a concert of Katy's where there were 20,000. I'm watching this generation and they were going at it. It almost looked like church, and I stood there and wept and kept on weeping and weeping. They're loving and worshipping the wrong thing." Now the prophesied world religious system will be one that is engaged in whoredom, both religiously and sexually. These two adulterous acts of idolatry, the act of worship in false religion and the worship of the human form, that will eventually lead to the worship of the Antichrist world leader. So friends, we are exhorted, aren't we, to flee from all sexual immorality.